When studying the history of the city of Atlanta, it is often enlightening to read what others have had to say about our city. It's interesting, in light of what we know today, to read the opinions of those who did not have the benefit of history to help frame their thoughts. Perhaps the most famous of quotes that did not age well comes from Stephen Herman Long, the first chief engineer of the Western and Atlantic Railroad, and the man who fixed the original location of the 0 Mile Post, the place around which all of Atlanta grew. In turning down an offer for half interest in a 200-acre plot of land that would eventually become Marietta Street, Long, speaking of Atlanta, said, "The terminus will be a good location for one tavern, a blacksmith shop, a grocery store, and nothing else." One of the most poetic descriptions of Atlanta comes from educator W.E.B. Du Bois, who in 1903 penned this description of Atlanta. "South of the north, yet north of the south, lies the city of 100 hills, peering out from the shadows of the past into the promise of the future." Du Bois' description, south of the north, yet north of the south, referenced the belief of the day that while Atlanta was most certainly located in the American South, it was not a city of the South. This image was borne out in several 19th century newspaper articles that referenced Atlanta as the New York of the South. The former, very respected editor of the Atlanta Constitution, Pulitzer Prize winner Ralph McGill, expressed the belief that Atlanta was special among Southern cities when he wrote, "Atlanta is not a city of magnolias and mockingbirds looking at the past and mourning for it. It never was that sort of city. We are a city always looking ahead and going places." McGill was certainly not the first to observe the pace at which life in the city of Atlanta moved. The propensity of our city's residents for acquiring wealth and prestige was summed up nicely as far back as 1867 by the Milledgeville Federal Union newspaper when it described Atlanta as "certainly a fast place in every sense of the word, and our friends in Atlanta are a fast people. They live fast and they die fast. They make money fast and they spend it fast. They build houses fast and then burn them down fast. To a stranger, the whole city seems to be running on wheels and all of its inhabitants continually blowing off steam." The New York Times, in an article written in the late 1860s, was more succinct and a bit more critical when describing Atlanta as a go-ahead town where enterprise, license, and lawlessness form a blissful and inseparable trinity. 20 years later, in the 1880s, the Georgia Major, a short-lived Atlanta newspaper, gave an even more critical description of Atlanta's business and social community by opining that Atlanta has her dudes. Among men in the trades and professions who have acquired fortunes and know of no pleasures higher than a vulgar show of their purges, as a rule they are offshoots of the most plebeian parentage, and void of any virtues and refinements of persons of gentle birth and decent instincts. Ouch. Fortunately for our self-esteem, we can soothe the sting of unrighteous foes by looking to Henry Grady in his 1886 speech about the New South, in which he argued that the South should embrace industrialization and commerce instead of relying on agriculture. Grady believed that this would lead to a new social class based on achievement and acquisition of wealth, rather than relying on inherited privilege and social standing. In describing Atlanta and Atlantans, Grady said, "Atlanta is full of these self-made men. They enrich her blood, quicken her pulse, and give her vitality. They have won fame and fortune by no accident of inheritance. They have sunk the cornerstones of the only aristocracy that Americans should know." Historian Lynn Watson-Powers took a more balanced approach in describing the personality of Atlanta when she referenced the oft-mentioned Atlanta spirit by writing that, "The Atlanta spirit has encompassed many different qualities over the years, from sheer manipulation, outright self-promotion, and over-optimism, to genuine progress, idealism, and true vision. And to end on a more practical note, whether you find favor or fault with the city of Atlanta, it seems logical to agree with this hard-to-argue-with sentiment. When you die, whether you're going to heaven or hell, you'll have to connect through Atlanta. This is Lance Russell, and that is one of the stories of Atlanta.